Hello, everybody. My name is Vinny Silva. I'm an associate marriage family therapist here at Nexus Youth and Family Services, located in Jackson, California, Amador County. And today we're going to talk about anxiety, mindfulness, and resilience, trying to create awareness, build habits, and support emotional well-being. So, what anxiety actually is, a lot of times out there in the community, we have misconceptions about what anxiety looks like and what is its intent and purpose. So, it's a normal survival response. It's not necessarily a flaw. It's something that activates within us when we feel like we're in danger. There's a help with focus, safety, and preparation. But it only becomes a problem when it's constant, it's overwhelming, and it's hard to control, removing us from the present and putting us into the future or ruminating on the past. And it can interfere with work, relationships, and sleep. Anxiety exists on a spectrum. It's not just diagnosed versus not, right? Some people, I think, have generalized anxiety disorder, which is one part of the spectrum, and other people feel anxiety in said situations, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have a diagnosis. So when does anxiety become a disorder? So generalized anxiety disorder, it's excessive worry for most days. We're looking anywhere between 3 to 5 days per week for about 6+ months, and it's hard to control. Most of the symptoms you see is restlessness, fatigue, poor concentration, irritability. You'll get muscle tension, and sleep issues. And other types of anxiety are also panic and disorder or specific phobias or even social anxiety as well, which I got to put out there. You being nervous to do a presentation does not necessarily constitute into social anxiety, right? There's certain criteria for social anxiety that one would have to be. Everyday anxiety versus clinical. So everyday anxiety is linked to real stressors, right? Like money, kids, work. It comes and goes, and it can motivate into action, right? Anxiety is still a survival response that can push us forward to get things done. Clinical anxiety is out of proportion to the situation. Very small things become bigger and bigger because of our ruminating thoughts or our excessive worry, and it's persistent and hard to necessarily turn off. And it leads to avoidance or shutdown. This is where behaviors like alcoholism or substance use can really come into play. It's excellent way, not an excellent, but it's a coping skill that a lot of people use in order to disassociate or turn off all that worry that they have on their day-to-day stuff. So anxiety is not necessarily just people with panic attacks, right? It can also looking like shutting down or not being emotionally available. Anxiety shows up differently. It can be job related because of the unpredictability, the weather or finances, trades, injury risk, or job instability. The reason I put weather out there, if you work in rural communities and agriculture is one of the main things, weather and its type and how it's going to affect your crops is absolutely going to have a play in the way that your anxiety shows up as it pertains to your work. Gender differences. So with men, it can mostly look like irritability, anger, and substance use, like we talked about in the previous slide. Whereas with women, there's a tendency to see rumination, being feeling overwhelmed and emotional exhaustion. Most of this is coming up not necessarily because it's biological, but because of social constructs, right? So a male can still ruminate, can still feel overwhelmed and feel emotional exhaustion, but its manifestations are going to look different to a woman because of the social expectations. And socioeconomic stress, right? There's financial strain, which can then activate chronic stress activation. So limited access to care and symptoms build, right? So poor, lower demographic areas are going to feel higher stress levels on a day-by-day basis because they're in survival mode. That socioeconomic status is affecting them, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. So what anxiety looks like in real life, it's not always nervousness. It's snapping at family. It's avoiding responsibilities and procrastinating to the last minute and not deciding to do things at all. Overworking and never slowing down. This particularly shows up with men, shutting down or zoning out. And physical symptoms, headaches, tension, sleep issues, panic attacks, muscle spasms. And so many people say, I'm just stressed, but really when we dive in deeper, it's anxiety, right? Stress being the symptom, but the anxiety and that pervasive worry is there. And mostly you can identify that when we're trying to constantly look for something that we can control and an inability to try to cope with the fact that we can't control what's going on around us. So mindfulness is paying attention on purpose without immediately reacting. This is basically focusing on the power of now, present time, removing ourselves from what has not yet occurred and disconnecting ourselves from the emotional strain of what has already happened. And so research shows that it improves emotional regulation, reduces anxiety symptoms, and it helps people step back from certain thoughts. It's not about necessarily just reacting, but changing your relationship to stress. Stress is the signal. It's not something for you to conquer and defeat. It's just notifying me that something is up, that I need to go back and check in with myself physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, um, professionally, and so on and so forth. So ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, it's a little bit more solution focused. We're looking at something that I really like the way that they look at their relationship with stress. We're not fighting thoughts, we're just trying to change the behavior because the thoughts is telling me that my behavior is coming from a rooted place of pervasive worry and feeling overwhelmed. So practical tools, name it, don't fight it. That is worry, right? I'm noticing anxiety. It's not that I am anxious. I'm removing myself from that identifying factor. I'm not creating this relationship with anxiety and putting and intertwining it as one. Instead, I'm separating it, I'm diffusing it, but I am still identifying the fact that it's there. Because thoughts does not always equal objective facts of the reality of the situation. So that's a value check. And what matters right now? Live well even when anxiety is present. So I'm not going to shut down because my anxiety is there, but what's within my control that I can still press on and press forward. And that begins with the practical tool of being centered in our mind. How can I reframe? Again, this doesn't mean that's going to eliminate the anxiety, that all of a sudden all these symptoms are going to disappear. But by changing that relationship, it's going to activate my behavior in a more progressive way to get things done than staying ruminating or staying stuck and stagnant. So resilience is a capacity to keep going under pressure, routine over motivation. I don't feel motivated to do this, but it's part of my routine to get this stuff done. Connecting with people, even 1 to 2 people matters, building that support system. I think very much so over the last 20, 25 years, maybe going back as far as 30, the essence of community has really dwindled down, has diminished. We've become more individualistic, we've become a little bit more isolated, and so building those support systems with people that really matter and check in and express what's going on is absolutely important to build up that resiliency skill. Making sure my sleep and my movement and my breathing are on point. And 2 simple practices, right? A 90-second reset, slow breaths, naming things I can see, because for 90 seconds, I'm staying present to what matters right here and right now, disconnecting from self. And that allows me to have more resilience, a capacity for resilience to step on and move forward. And anchoring my habit, I'm pairing mindfulness with daily tasks. Resilience isn't a personality, it's a trainable behavior. And a lot of us have been given circumstances and environment for us to increase that said trait, but all of us have access to it. It's not just personality based. So resources, if you're in the Amador County area, obviously Amador County Behavioral Health, the number is listed there below. Nexus Youth and Family Services, right? Most of our clientele is serving the youth and it's abiding families. NAMI, Amador, obviously another great connection, and Sierra Wind Wellness and Recovery Center, all great foundations and resources if you're in the local area. So with that being said, thank you guys for following along, for being a part of my presentation. If you could fill out the demographic survey with our QR code and our well-being survey, it would be greatly appreciated for us to know what is working and what is not when we are posting our wellness workshops online. And I appreciate it. Hope you guys have a good day.